Hi guys, it's Carrie Ike
and Sarah Norris.
We're two occupational therapists at the STAR Institute for STPD.
And today we're going to talk about how we know that sensory processing disorder is a real thing. And one of the things that we do know is that sensory processing is something that everybody does. And everybody has preferences, things that they like and they don't like. But people don't come to us because they don't like creamed corn or because they don't like wool, and those are the only problems they have. Those are preferences. What we look at is the continuum of, there are things I like and I don't like, that can move into, I have some challenges with some sensations. And then when it becomes a disorder is when there's an actual impact on function. So some part of your life is really affected by the way you process or don't process sensations.
Yeah, the first step of our adult process that we do are sensory consults. And so we have adults sign up a time to talk with us for 60 minutes. And why we do that is to kind of gain some information about how others process sensory input. And some of the adults that call us, we find out that they, just in the last year or so, have started experiencing sensory challenges. And so it's really important for us to see kind of what factors are involved in these sensory changes. And so sometimes what we find is some of these sensory challenges are more acute, and that might be from dietary changes, it might be from two medications impacting each other, and they're causing people to be sensitive to light, sensitive to noise. Other things might be sleep related. So there's a multitude of reasons why you can have sensory challenges. What we know about sensory processing disorder is that it's more of a lifelong challenge. And so we're looking at from birth all the way to today, what have your challenges been when you were younger? What were they in infancy? If your mom or dad are able to report those things to you, that's how we know that it's more of sensory processing disorder, a neuro challenge, rather than something that might have happened and might be better treated with other types of treatments or other types of consultations with psychologists or with your primary physician. As occupational therapists, sensory processing disorder, the lifelong challenges are more what we're equipped to treat.
And I think what I want to add to what Carrie's saying is that sensory processing disorder is a brain-based condition, and there are other brain-based conditions that can look like sensory processing disorder or sensory processing challenges. And there are other brain-based disorders that have an element of sensory processing challenges that go along with it. So there have been some really great studies that have come out from, especially the ones that have recently come out from UCSF about the brain imaging that they're doing on individuals with sensory processing disorder and comparing it to other conditions like ADHD and autism. They're able to see that the brain looks different when it's just a sensory processing disorder challenge compared to if it's just an ADHD or just an autism challenge. And even to the point of being able to identify if you have autism and SPD, that even looks different. The brain activity is even different. So there's some really exciting research coming out about how SPD is a distinct part of the brain that's affected. It's in the sensory processing centers of the brain like we would expect to see. So it's really great to have that research to back up what we have known kind of through clinical findings, and understanding that it's something that can occur with other disorders, of course, but it is actually a distinct disorder of its own as well.
Yeah, another set of studies that really helps us know that SPD is real is at the STAR Center, now the STAR Institute, we've done a number of studies using electrodermal responders. What we did was we put these responders on kids right around their wrists. And what we found is that this is a really good way to test sensory processing and sensory function. And so what they did in this study is they would elicit different types of sensations over and over and see how different children responded. And what they found was that children who were over-responsive, in that over-responsive subtype, responded much differently than children who were under-responsive and neurotypicals. What they also found in those studies was that children with autism and children with ADHD also showed different patterns from the electrodermal responders, which gave us really good insight to see how SPD is different than these other conditions, as well as how the different subtypes are different.
And so right now, most places that you go, they're not going to hook you up to an MRI machine or to an electrodermal response to really graph where you fall and where your responses are, but we can do a lot of clinical observations to determine what might be causing those over-responsive patterns or those under-responsive patterns. And basically what we wanted to do today is just take a moment to let you guys know a little bit of what we know, that this is why we believe in what we do. This is why we feel like this is something that's worth spending time working on, and why we feel really passionate about why we are addressing people that we feel like are being underserved right now and under-recognized.
Yeah, and I know another thing that I get from a lot of the adults I talk to is that we really are lacking research in the adult SPD community, and that's something that we are working on in order to build more of. And I know that especially with some of these brain imaging studies, I think it would be really cool to get adults involved in some of those studies. We were able to find a study from the University of London that looked at SPD in individuals who have autism. And what they found in that study was they found a correlation, but they found that the sensory processing challenges and the characteristics of autism were lifelong, which gives us some supporting evidence to validate those adults with SPD, that these challenges are lifelong.
And they don't just go away when you turn 18 and the services stop happening for you. We recognize that going into adulthood, your responsibilities grow and the pressures on adults is tremendous. And it's very difficult to go from maybe you never had support for these processing challenges, but you were somehow able to cope with the support of your family and friends and the environment you were in. But for a lot of adults, it's that crossing the line into, now I'm on my own and I'm responsible not only for myself, but for my children and for my coworkers, and there's just so much pressure. And yes, it's hard for everybody. Adulthood is hard for everyone. We just know that that's where a lot of times we see that function fall apart. You know, relationships are really difficult to maintain, and jobs are hard to stick with, and it gets really hard.
Yeah, and or, you know, maybe you have identified having sensory processing disorder your whole life, or maybe you've been identified with different conditions such as depression, anxiety. Another study that comes to mind is a study by Moya Keneally, who found a significant correlation between sensory overresponsivity and anxiety and depression, which I think gives us so much support behind what we're seeing in the adult community. That if you have these other disorders and they just don't, like we've talked about before, they just don't quite fit, studies show that there is a significant correlation. Not everybody who has anxiety and depression has sensory processing disorder, but we definitely see a correlation there.
Right. So we just wanted to take a minute to let you guys know that we really care. We really want you to know that this is something that we're kind of wanting to champion, that this is a real thing, and we know it's hard, and we're working really hard to try and make things better for everybody that's having these challenges. The recognition, the services.
Yeah, we'll post the studies below so you guys can check them out if you want to. We realize that reading scholarly articles can be kind of challenging if you're not in the medical field, but at least it gives you some of the evidence that we're reading about, we're excited about. And again, post any questions you have, any comments that you have. We're really excited to hear all of your guys' comments, and it's been really cool to get the conversation started. So thank you.